This is our land. It's not land of Arabs. It's not land of Europeans. It is our land. So if you are stupid enough and you go to bring that nonsense here, no, we teach you a lesson. But who cares about those whites? If they come here, I just tell them to go to hell, because I don't need to be white. I don't need to. So wasting everybody's time.
Yeah.
And that's how we had problems even with Muslims. Some of our Muslims, they picked some bad habits from the Middle East. I don't want to go to America. I go to America as a favor to the Americans that have come to visit you. Because here, what am I lacking here? Here, how can I go to America to do what? Eh? This is the most comfortable place on earth. So these people, but all that arrogance of the foreign countries is because of not listening to the sermon of the preacher of today. Because if we don't use our talents fully, then we go into all those problems of begging, of borrowing, of that. This way it all starts. Let's use our talents fully. As the Bible says, we shall be lenders, not borrowers. That's what it says. It is in the Bible. So when you say that we are borrowing, we are begging, it is because we are not doing what the Bible told us to do. Self-sufficiency. We have the capacity, we don't lack anything. The economy is growing now. It's growing very well. Inflation, in spite of the problems which are still there, in spite of the corruption which is still there, but the economy is growing very well. We have got the lowest inflation rate, you check. One of the lowest in the world, and yet we have not done as much as we can. So therefore, intimidated by all these fellows, if they don't, anybody who doesn't want to respect our sovereignty, bye-bye.
One thing I love about President of Uganda, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, is that he does not romanticize the West. Yes, that's the reality. As far as we know, maybe some people will say he has been in power for 40 years, blah, blah, blah. But one thing I know for sure, he does not romanticize the West. He does not fall for the lies of the white systems. He does not fall for the cheap lies of white supremacy. That's one thing I love mostly about Yoweri Museveni. And Yoweri Museveni has repeatedly issued strong public warnings to Western governments, especially the United States and the European Union, okay, against what he described as interference in Ugandans or interference in Africa's internal affair. And these warnings typically surface around security operations and human rights dispute, elections and everything. So thus, I give that to Yoweri Museveni. He does not fall for the lies of the white supremacy. Now, in this video, I'm going to talk about the speech he has been giving about warnings to these Western countries. But I want you to listen to these clips, and then I continue. Since Western societies do not appreciate politeness, you see, this is a problem with the Westerners. They cannot understand politeness. They cannot understand that somebody is keeping quiet, but he's not happy with me. No. Until you tell him that you go and eat your mother's something. That's when you... You see, the problem I see in the West, really, you have two problems now, and that's why you waste our time. You seem to have two problems. You seem to have some deficit in philosophy, but also
deficit of information.
I mean, what we really are we really, very often we are presented as enemies. Is it so?
You see, the problem I see in the West, really, you have two problems now, and that's why you waste our time. Because there's nothing that we don't know. Either in Africa or in the world. So, but what I see on your side, you seem not to have enough information. You seem to have two problems. You seem to have some deficit in philosophy, but also deficit of information. So therefore, when it comes to now, the question is, are we enemies? For us, we don't see you as enemies. But somehow, you don't see that by involving yourselves in matters which you don't understand well, and which you shouldn't, even if you understood, these are not your matters, these are our matters. These are our internal affairs. Even if you had a good understanding, it would not be in order for you to involve yourself. Apart from the fact that you may not even have the understanding. So really that's the issue. It's not enemies, it is, I would call it misconduct. Misconduct, mishandling, which can lead to very serious consequences. Like in the case of Congo. Up to now, it has never recovered. Here in Uganda, the phenomenon of Idi Amin was supported by, was actually promoted by some groups to take over power here. And then once he was in power, he was supported for some time. But for us, we opposed him from the word go. So again, there we had spent 8 years solving the problem of Idi Amin. So when those riots happened, they were attacking. They were attacking the security forces using pangas, using hammers, so some of them were shot. By 32 of them were shot in that process. It's clear that one. But then the other 32, the other 22, these are the ones I need much more clarification. Then I will share it with you. There's nobody whom cannot be accounted for. They will account for him. So I thank you very much. We have had a very good discussion, and we are now discovering that we are not enemies. Certainly, we don't want to be the enemies of the Europeans, because many of them are our good friends, especially the ordinary people. Now, with the European Union, we don't have a joint supervisory body. Which one is that?
It's called the Joint ACP-EU Parliamentary Assembly. Representatives from parliaments from all over these countries come together and they meet regularly and they go through issues which affect their relationships. It's not a binding, but it's a supervisory, it's a monitoring mechanism. So there is something along those lines
yes,
as well.
But it's not supervising sovereign units. It's not supervising sovereign units. So why can, first of all, the European Parliament are the ones who met alone. They didn't have the SCP. It was not a joint, we are represented.
responsibility of the European Union Parliament, as well as this joint assembly. It is mentioned in the treaty as well, saying you have to monitor, you have the responsibility to look into this, and they do it.
To supervise Uganda.
No, to look to compare what we have agreed with what is actually happening. They say, we agreed to respect these human rights. We agreed to work with civil society. We agreed, and then say, I don't think this is actually happening. And then they bring those issues to our attention. That is what they do.
Welcome back. Now, in this video, we are seeing Yoweri Museveni does three very important things. He directly confronts Western governments and he rejects foreign interference in Uganda's politics or African politics, and he signals that Uganda will not be bullied. Now, this is not accidental language, but this is calculated power messaging. Museveni is not talking to activists. He's talking to Washington. He's talking to Brussels. He's talking to London. Let me be honest with you. I'll say this. Western governments don't panic when elections are rigged in their allied monarchies. Western countries, they don't panic when protesters are jailed. They don't panic when internet shutdown happens. But suddenly when Uganda, Zimbabwe, Mali, Burkina Faso or Niger says that we choose our own path, here comes the sanctions. You hear there is statements, threats, media outrage. That's not democracy. That is discipline. Museveni understands this game because he has watched it before decades. And when Museveni says that foreigners should not interfere in our internal affairs, what he really means is we are no longer a playground. And this warning is not just defensive. It is historical moment speaking. Uganda remembers British colonial control. Uganda remembers artificial borders. They remembers political manipulation, and they remembers economic extraction. So when Western embassies, they start meeting opposition figures, they start funding NGOs, they start issuing threats, Museveni hears colonial echoes. I give it to Museveni. For example, let me talk about this Uganda specifically. On the opposition dynamic. Whenever Bobi Wine rises politically, Western media suddenly discovers Uganda. Not because they love Ugandans, but because he fits a narrative. Okay? I'm not saying I'm a fan of Bobi Wine. I'm a fan of Museveni. I don't want to say that direct. That's not for me to say. That is for Ugandans to say. But personally, I have my views about all these two leaders. Okay? Bobi Wine is young, charismatic, and media-friendly, easily marketable as democratic change. Museveni warnings is not necessarily against Bobi Wine, but it is against external actors weaponizing Bobi Wine. And this is important because Africa has seen this movie before. We have seen this movie in Libya. We have seen this movie in Congo. We have seen this movie in Ivory Coast. And we have seen this movie in Haiti, a black nation. Same playbook. Now, in the video, I've seen Museveni repeatedly refer to stability, security, order, military readiness. And this is deliberate because he is telling the West, we are not weak, we are not naive, and chaos will not benefit you. Just remember, instability is profitable. NGO gets funding, media gets clicks, foreign interest negotiate cheap deals, and Museveni message is not here. It's not locally. You get me? And this is why young African, even those who don't like Museveni, still listen, because his warning is bigger than Uganda. It echoes through Sahel nation. It echoes what the Traore is saying. It echoes what youth movements are feeling. It echoes what Pan-Africans have warned for years. Africa is tired of being treated like a project. Okay? Africa is tired of being treated like a project, not a partner. Now, let's not lie some things. Let's be honest. Rejecting Western interference do not automatically mean good governance. Sovereignty does not excuse oppression. Power must still be accountable. And Africans must be brave enough to say both things at once. Hands off Africa and respect African people. So Museveni warnings is valid, yes, but it also challenges Africans to ask who holds African leaders accountable without foreign manipulation. We need to know that. And that's a conversation we must own. Okay? Now, the Western is nervous, the West countries is nervous, and the real fear is not just Museveni, the real fear is contagion. When I mean, if Uganda resists, other might follow because it's contagious. It's like a virus. If Uganda resists, aid leverage weakens, narrative control fades, and this is why their clips matters. This is why why they circulate. That's it. So Museveni does something good, but again, we need to question everything. For example, when Western governments speak about Uganda or speak about Africa or the global South, there's no face they repeat endlessly. They will say, oh, we are concerned about human rights. But concern is not neutral. Concern is power dressed as morality. Okay? Human rights matter. African lives matter. African voice matter. The problem is not human rights. The problem is who controls the definition, who controls the timing, who controls the enforcement. Okay? Human rights spike during elections. Human rights spike when leaders reject Western advice. Human rights only spike when countries pivot for non-Western partners. Okay? That's not coincidence. That is conditional morality. When Uganda sent troops for regional security missions, suddenly there is silence, there is praise, there is partnership. When Uganda asserts sovereignty, there is statements, there is sanctions, there is threats to Uganda. Okay? And that's the pressure Museveni is calling out. The real message is that we know the playbook, and Museveni knows how this thing is done. He knows. That's why on the video he sounded experienced, and that matters. Okay? This is a man who has watched government fall. He's a man who have seen revolution hijacked. Museveni is a man who has observed leaders replaced through civil society channels. So when he warns the West, he's not guessing. He is referencing historical debt. When I zoom out, I'll say the pattern has played out in Congo. The pattern has played out in Congo. Assassinations disguised as instability. In Libya, we have seen in Ivory Coast, in Haiti. It is same formula. Media framing, diplomatic pressure, economic leverage, internet destabilization, and etc., etc. So we know this. You just tell me in the comment section, what do you think about Museveni warnings? As long as it's election time, we have to make choices. But again, we have to know, Museveni is one of the guys who has said no to this. Yeah. Let's meet the next episode. Peace out.